Hi, this is Louis from North and South Podcast, and today we have a very special guest of Rachel Flanagan, a university student at LIPA, and an artist who was diagnosed with tic disorder in January of this year, however, developed tics as early as December of 2022. Today we'll delve into the story of Rachel and speak and raise awareness for tics alongside Tourette's syndrome. In addition, we are also just out of Tourette's Awareness Month, as soon as I first spoke about speaking to yourself, there was no better time to get you on as a guest on our podcast and speak about your personal experiences and developments with having your diagnosis and before your diagnosis. We will explore topics and stigmas around tics and Tourette's to overall create an interest and exploration into this topic. From researching online, I have found that according to the Cambridge community, over 300,000 children and adults are living with TS, which is Tourette's syndrome, in the UK. And this is not obviously taken into consideration the fact of people that have not yet been diagnosed with tics or Tourette's. So start us off, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your story as of now and how you developed your tics in 2022 and a bit about what you were doing at university?
Yeah, so my name's Rachel. I'm 22. And the way that I developed tics is back in 2022, it was November, like just at the end of November, I basically had a massive panic attack and it started off with just the neck twitches, which you can see now. And then sort of like over the course of a weekend exploded.
Wow.
So like it happened over the course of a weekend. So on the Friday, I was at uni and I was absolutely fine. We went to do this like Christmas light switch on thing. And then I didn't see anyone over the weekend. And then when I came in on Monday, I had no control over my body. I was saying things that I would never say. And doing things that I would never do, like hitting myself, hitting the table, hitting others. It was kind of scary, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But yeah, it's weird because I didn't come to university with tics. I was like completely neurotypical. Well, not completely. I've had generalized anxiety disorder since I was about 13.
Right. Yeah.
But I only got diagnosed in January of this year, thanks to a 3-hour-long tic attack.
Wow.
That landed me in A&E, which was an excellent experience, as you can imagine. But yeah, I'm at LIPA, as you said.
Yeah.
Met some lovely, lovely people, yourself included.
Well, thank you very much. I'll take that.
You're so welcome, dude. And I'm studying applied theatre and community drama, which is basically, it's like using theatre as a tool rather than just entertainment. So like there's loads of different avenues you can go down, and like the main avenue that I want to go down is either working with people like myself who developed tics later on in life, or working with like children with disabilities, working with children, or like I'm also quite interested in prison theatre, theatre for reform, theatre for social change. There's loads of different avenues that I'm interested in, and the best thing is I can go down any of them and then switch halfway through, which is excellent. Or I can do multiple at once.
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
Something that I'm quite passionate about. That's me.
Yeah, no, brilliant. It's interesting because obviously I did a very similar degree myself, not at LIPA but at Hope, doing applied theatre and things like that, and working in prisons and things like that, and especially schools as well. Do you think that your tics something that is possibly quite difficult when working in a setting like that?
Yeah, definitely. Like it depends which community group I'm working with, where I need to like work out how my mind's going to work, because the thing about tics is they don't stop. I've not got an off button for them. My brain is always going. So I need to do a lot of preparation for working with a community group, not just planning the workshops and planning what I'm going to do, but planning how I'm going to present and deal with it. So like if I'm working with adults, then I feel like I can be a bit more relaxed, a bit more calm. I can tick a bit more, I can let out the swearing tics, all that sort of stuff. Whereas if I'm working with children, I need to do a lot of preparation for suppressing them, because I do ultimately swear. And I can say a lot of stuff that is really, really offensive and not how I think anyways.
Yeah.
It's the same if I'm working with a vulnerable group. Like if I'm working with a group of refugees, then I need to do a lot of preparation work so that I ultimately don't say those offensive things. But with my friends, it's a different story. They're all aware. They're all very, very accepting and understanding, and they laugh at the offensive ones because they are ultimately quite funny coming out of my mouth at times.
Yeah, yeah. You don't expect it, kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like it does affect my work, and it does mean that I have to take more breaks than someone else has to. If I'm in the middle of a big project that is mentally and physically exhausting, I am more at risk for sleeping in and getting up late. But unfortunately, there's not really much I can do about that. Like even if I have an early night and I set 20 alarms, unfortunately, it still happens, and it's real. No one is ever more annoyed when it happens than I am.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because it's frustrating, because it's not like I'm sleeping in to be lazy. I'm sleeping in because my body is physically exhausted. But I'm still doing what I can to be there, you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So you spoke about preparation for working with specific groups. What sort of preparation do you do? What is preparation for yourself with someone with tics?
It's knowing that I've got a safe space where if my tics are getting too much, I can go to and just let them out. Because suppressing tics is a little bit similar to suppressing a sneeze. It's just a bit more prolonged than keeping a sneeze in, but it's still like when you let it out, it comes out just as powerful and just, or if not more so. So I need to know that there's a safe place that I can go to, even if it's outside down the road where the community group can't hear me, or just outside of the room around the corner in a place where I can just let everything out, or even if it's just the toilet, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Like a place where I can just gather my thoughts and let the tics out. Fuck off, like that one.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's also like doing some breathing exercises, practicing mindfulness. I fall asleep to a meditation every night because another element of tics is I do struggle with my sleep, which is great for the waking up stuff whenever I'm
of course,
exhausted.
Yeah.
Because it does get really, really difficult to just switch off at night when I'm ticking away. Because another element that people aren't quite aware of is mental tics that people can't see. Like it does mean that my brain is always going on, and it's very rare that there's an off switch. And the mental tics can be quite scary as well, because it's not my thoughts, it's the tics' thoughts.
Yeah.
But yeah, like so like my preparation is like knowing the workshop plan inside out, knowing that there's a safe place that I can go to, and just doing everything I can in my power to keep myself as relaxed and calm as possible. Yeah.
And do you think the places that you've worked at currently have been accepting of that and have given you that kind of space and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've been very lucky in finding paid work and even volunteer work who have worked for people who've been the most understanding. Because in our line of work, we do have to work with a lot of vulnerable people who have their own access needs. So it's only natural to, if someone working for you has their own access needs, then it's only natural to do what you can to meet those access needs. And uni have been absolutely brilliant. Like, I cannot fault Lipper at all. Since I've been diagnosed, I've been given an SSD, which has all of the reasonable adjustments and what might come of the tics and like what sort of stuff they can do to help. So that's like letting me crochet in a class, because that helps me keep my hands busy. I've now got a student support document or an SSD, which has all of the reasonable adjustments on that I need to have my needs met. So that's like letting me crochet in class, having a mat in the room just in case of a tic attack. What else? Letting me take breathers whenever I need to, because things will get too much. Yeah, they've been absolutely great. Like, I can't fault university at all. In terms of my summer job, when I come back home, I work for a really lovely family, helping to look after their children. And the first week that I started, my mum was messaging, because my mum and the mum of the family are friends, which is how I've got that job. And my mum was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about Rachel's tics. I'm so sorry she's swearing." And my boss just said, "We've accepted that it's a part of Rachel. She's absolutely fine, and she's welcome to be herself with us." And they've met every single access need that I've ever asked for, and I am so grateful to them.
Oh yeah, massively. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then like my job that I do at uni, which is like working open days, doing taster days and assisting with the workshops there, they've also been absolutely fantastic. So like if I've needed to step out of a workshop or needed to step away from a tour just for a breather, they've been amazing. They've been like, "Yeah, it's fine, we'll take over there." Or they've got 2 staff members in the room already. "That's absolutely fine. You go do what you need to do." So I've been really, really lucky, but I've also heard quite a few horror stories of people with work. So I am very, very aware of the fact that I could be facing discrimination and I could be facing a lot of setbacks, but I'm very much of the mindset of these tics don't define me. So why should I let them stop me from doing what I want to do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's true with a lot of neurodivergency and things. Like myself with ADHD and getting that diagnosis and things like that. And you know, a lot of people said to me like, "Oh, you may struggle to find work now because of that fact." But for me, it was more of like a realization for myself and understanding me kind of thing. So I think it was definitely beneficial for me. Something that I didn't know about before meeting yourself was the difference between a tic disorder and Tourette's, as they are classed as 2 separate diagnoses, aren't they? So just want to possibly explain a bit about how they are different, or do you think they are different, or are they the same?
So to my understanding, Tourette's you're born with, and it's hereditary, and it's a neuro disorder. I wasn't born ticking. There was absolutely no signs of me ticking in my childhood. To my understanding, my tic disorder, which is called functional tic disorder, that is very much based on a mental health background, because as I mentioned, I've got anxiety, I've had symptoms of depression, I've had symptoms of not ADHD, symptoms of PTSD,
right?
And also like disassociation and all that sort of stuff. And I grew up with panic attacks and anxiety. So the doctors think that my tics are very much based on my mental health background. The only reason that with Tourette's, I think the criteria is you have to be diagnosed before you're 18, or if it develops after you're 18, then there needs to be someone else in your family, and there needs to be signs that you had tics before you're 18. So an example of this is Evie Meg on TikTok, known as this trippy hippie. She's had signs of ticking since she was about 11, I think. But she didn't get diagnosed with Tourette's until she was in her 20s. There's also, Channel 4 did a great documentary called The Mum Who Got Tourette's. She didn't tic until she was in her 40s, I believe, but her son also has Tourette's, so that's why she was able to be diagnosed with it. I'm the only person in my family that tics.
Right, okay.
And when they first started, it was very, very new for my family. It was very scary. We didn't know what was going on with me. I just knew that it was tics because of what I'd seen on the internet. And then when I eventually got my diagnosis, I was like, amazing. I know what's going on. I know what we can do. And the treatments for functional tics and Tourette's are pretty much the same, I believe, which is a type of therapy that you can have. There is also medication options, but my doctor chose not to go down that route just in case they make my tics worse, because if we're exposed to too much stuff, then it can go one way or the other, I believe. Yeah. So like that's to my understanding, but I'm also not a medical professional. I'm just going off the information that I know and the information I've been given. A really good source to learn about different tic disorders is a charity that I use a lot, called Tourette's Action. They are absolutely fantastic, and I have met so many people through them. So I'm very, very grateful for the work that they do.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. And what's the name of that charity again?
Tourette's Action.
Amazing. Well, we'll put that in the description. So I think it's something that isn't really. I mean, I think you'd probably be the only person I know that has suffered with tics or anything like that. And it's something that you don't really hear much about, is there? Really? I mean, or as much in mainstream. I feel like I think with social media, with TikTok and things, it's getting more of a light, and people are speaking and raising awareness and stuff like that. So that's really
definitely
good to see. Yeah,
definitely. Like, and I was very lucky when they first started. Well, it doesn't have to be lucky. You can view it however you want. But like, as you know, my course that I do is a very, very small, tight-knit group. So when they started for me in first year, there just so happened to be two other girls in both years above who also ticked. Okay. So there was one in first year, which was me, one in second year, and one in third year. So when they first started, I was able to talk to them and go up to them and be like, hey, this is first started for me. Do you have any advice? What can I do? Because I don't know what's going on with me.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky and became quite close to both of them. And then because I'm at an arts university, there are so many other people there who tic, like a lot more than you'd realise. And then I found out at the start of my second year that there was someone on the staff for my course that also ticked, and I was like, this is mental, because I had no idea.
Yeah.
He hid it really, really well. So I was quite lucky to already be in a community where there were a lot of people who ticked, whereas like people I've spoken to through the support groups that I go to, they didn't know anyone when their tics first started. So I've been really, really fortunate to be already in that sort of community, and to have people that I can go to in real life and say like, hey, I'm really struggling with my tics. Do you have any advice, please?
Yeah.
And like, even when I did my first year show, there was 5 of us in the cast and crew who were all ticking, and I was like, this is like insane. So it was like, it got a bit mental. And like, if you are ever in the presence of 2 people who tick, tics bounce off each other.
I can imagine.
So it was just the amount of like tic wheels that we got ourselves into, or loops that we got ourselves into. It was so funny. It made it a bit more entertaining.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially with group work, sometimes it can be quite daunting, can't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing. Well, it's going really well. Something that I was gonna ask about something that I spoke about in my podcast with ADHD and my journey getting my neurodivergent kind of diagnosis with anxiety recently as well, with panic disorder. And there's always this kind of stigma around diagnosis and labeling of said diagnosis, that sometimes that can be debilitating. So kind of want to just get what your opinion on is. Do you think it's necessary for people to get diagnoses, or do you think it's more situational to who it is? And for yourself as well, how do you feel being given that diagnosis this year? Has it helped you out in any way?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I know that when I got my diagnosis back in January, it honestly felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because I was like, finally, I know what's wrong with me. I know why I don't have control over my body anymore. But like, I still have to say to like people in the streets, like, oh yeah, I've got Tourette's, sorry. But I do that just to make things easier for myself, because if I go up to someone who is like looking at me weirdly and is wondering why I'm saying like, what? Penis, why I'm saying random words and inappropriate or offensive phrases, and I say like, oh yeah, sorry, I've got functional tic disorder, people will be like, what? What's that? Because there isn't enough known about it. So it's honestly just so much easier to say Tourette's, because everyone already has at least a bit of an understanding about it, because of like different portrayals in the media. Not all of those portrayals in the media are good. South Park, I'm looking at you.
Yes, yeah.
That episode. I'm not a big South Park fan anyways, but that episode. Yeah. So like, it's easier for me to say Tourette's to random strangers in the street, but if I'm like, or like to a community group I'm working with for the first time and will probably never work with again, it's just so much easier for me to say, oh yeah, by the way, I have Tourette's. This is what I ask of you. Let's get on with the day. Because then it just addresses the elephant in the room. I don't need to delve into my medical history, which I'm not always comfortable with delving into.
Oh, of course. Yeah, totally.
So like, I do think there is an importance to having a diagnosis, but with a condition like tics and Tourette's, I think depending on the context of the situation that you're in, because every single situation is different, if someone was to come up to me before I got my diagnosis and say like, excuse me, do you have Tourette's syndrome? I'd be like, yeah, I do.
So I am aware of the fact that we're probably going to run out of time on this recording. So we will convene back and go into part 2. So have a little chill, a little bit of water, maybe a little snack, and then we'll come back.
Cool.
Well, welcome back to part 2 of the podcast about tics with Rachel.
Hi.
Yeah.
That's me.
Enjoy your little break.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very glad.
Some yogurt.
Well, healthy snacks. As you said about being in social situations and stuff and having to address to people that you have a tic disorder or a Tourette's to people. How do you feel people around, like walking around town and stuff? Do you ever feel like they look at you or stare at you because of it, or? I guess you don't really look out for it, do you? Really? But...
I don't particularly know. I only really notice it when I'm feeling a lot more self-conscious about it, because you know, I'm human, and there are days where they are worse than others, and like when they are being really, really bad. When they're being really, really bad, I do get a lot more self-conscious than I normally would. Like on a normal day, I don't really care what people think.
No, why should you?
Exactly, like it's my life, not theirs, you know?
Yeah.
But like on a really bad day where I'm struggling to walk, I'm struggling to breathe, because that's some of the things that people don't realize is like they've now developed to starting to affect my mobility, which is just absolutely fantastic, as you can imagine. So like I have a tic now where either one or both of my legs will seize up, and I do struggle to walk when that happens. Or I've also got a tic. I can feel it coming now. I'm talking about it. I've got a tic where it feels like I gag and I stop breathing, and they can be really scary. Like if I don't actively fight them.
Yes.
I mean, I've not been in a situation where I've passed out from not breathing, but
no.
Hopefully, touch wood.
Yes. Of course.
I can't reach it up.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll never happen.
Yes. Yeah.
So like if I'm having a bad day when that's happening, then I do feel a lot more self-conscious than I normally would. And the main areas, like the main age group of people I found that are judgmental is the older generation, because back when they were our age, people like me would have just been shut away and never been allowed out in society. And with that comes not malicious ignorance, but still ignorance all the same. And that can be really, really frustrating. Especially when because I have a tic that I actually picked up from that Channel 4 documentary that I mentioned before, where it says where I say I effing hate grannies. I don't hate grannies. I love grannies. They're great. They're so kind. But like I remember when they first started and I was first out with my mum on a shopping trip, and I was waiting for the toilet in M&S of all places. I was just ticking fuck off as I do. Like that's probably beans. It's probably one of my most common tics. And I just had an old lady stood behind me, like giving me death glares.
And that doesn't help either.
It really doesn't. Like if people bring attention to it. Oh.
Sorry, I do apologise. There's I live by a train track, so we
how dare you
have freight trains trundling past.
I
Sorry.
like trains.
Well, oh yeah, I forgot you had the train stick. That's quite funny. So yeah, sorry, were you speaking about the time in M&S with the older person behind you? Yeah.
She was giving me death glares, and like she didn't have to say anything. It's worse when things are left unsaid for me, when people will just like look at me funny. And I understand that like it all comes from a place of ignorance, and that ignorance isn't necessarily malicious. It's just a case of not knowing. Which is why I don't take offense to it. I always assume ignorance before malice.
Yes.
And that's just a general rule for me. But like quite often it's when things are left unsaid that my brain goes at 100 miles an hour and the anxiety kicks in, and I'm like, oh my god, they're going to get me kicked out of the shop because I'm saying all these really, really horrible things. But I can't help it. I can't help it.
Yeah.
So I went to London in April last year with my partner at the time, who is unfortunately now my ex-partner, but it happens. And I ordered the sunflower lanyard because London's like a very big place, and I didn't want to say the wrong thing to the wrong people.
Of course.
And something happened. And since I've ordered the sunflower lanyard, it's honestly been such a safety net for me. I don't wear it as often as I should, but it's absolutely fantastic to just not have to say anything to people, and if they look at me funny, then I can just be like, sunflower lanyard, look at that. Yeah. Not like that. Like I just won't say anything. But in terms of like in a professional setting, I either email my boss beforehand and let them know, like, oh yeah, by the way, I live with this. These are my access needs. Please meet them, otherwise you won't have me working for you.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to like the participants, I just give a little speech before I interact with them and say, like, by the way, guys, I'll address the elephant in the room now. You'll see me making some weird movements, hear me making some weird noises and probably saying some stuff. This is because I live with Tourette syndrome. I haven't had it my whole life. My one rule is if I say something funny, you are more than welcome to laugh because it's a natural response to me saying something funny.
Yeah.
But if I'm not laughing, then please don't laugh. And that's that is the only boundary I put in place for that. And so far I've not had any issues with that. If I'm working with slightly younger kids, I'll a good way I found to describe it has been there are two wires in my brain that are touching and they shouldn't be.
Yeah.
The response I've had off a kid with that is, are you a robot then? No, kid, I'm not a robot. He was like, why don't you go to the doctors? And I was like, oh boy, I've tried.
Yeah.
Why don't they just open up your brain and stop the wires from touching? I was like, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Very good question.
Oh, kids are lovely in that sense, aren't they? They're so innocent to everything. It's so
I
wholesome.
absolutely adore
sometimes.
children. Like, they come out with just some of the funniest stuff. Like when I was a TA, I had these hanging basket earrings that I wear sometimes. And one little girl, so I was working in year 4 at the time, and one little girl came up to me and said, like, I like your earrings, miss. Thanks. Yes. No, they're hanging baskets. Do you have a boyfriend, miss? No. Well, you won't get a boyfriend with those burger earrings. I was like, oh, thanks, kid.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a lovely sense of innocence that I feel is really lost in adults. I think if we all lived like we were when we were kids, especially with our innocence, it would be such a lovely world to live in, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Like I've tried to keep that childlike wonder in myself for the longest time.
Oh, you need to though. It's definitely needed. You know, your life would be a lot harder if you didn't sometimes just be able to take a break from what the government and what the community society wants you to be like.
Yeah, definitely. It's why I've sort of tried to keep up the creative hobbies that I've got. So like crocheting and writing and art and just generally being creative has kept me keep hold of that inner child, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that your neurodivergency is like lessened when you do creative hobbies and things? Because that's very similar to me with my ADHD.
Yeah, definitely.
If I'm creatively hands-on and things like that, I seem to be more in, you know, my brain seems to be less floating off going doing other things. It's focusing on one specific topic. So
yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before, like I enjoy crocheting, and that helps me to keep my hands busy, which means that if my hands are busy, then my brain can focus on that and on what's going on. So I honestly just enjoy doing that whilst watching TV, and I've started bringing it into lectures as well, which has helped me to just concentrate so much more. And like a question that I always get whenever I'm like facilitating or acting is, do you tic whilst you're doing that? And in all honesty, no. Because when my brain goes into like a professional mode, I don't tend to tic as much.
Of course.
And it's really, really strange because like when I'm acting, I don't tic. I play an instrument as well. I play the saxophone. When I'm playing that, I don't tic. When I'm facilitating, I don't tend to tic. It's just generally like sort of neck twitchy tics that you can see.
Yes.
Yes. To answer your question, whenever I do creative stuff, I tend to find that my brain calms down a lot and I tic less. But the thing is, like, my tics will never fully go. because as I mentioned before, like I get invisible tics that if we were interacting face to face like we are now, you wouldn't be able to see them.
Yes.
Because like not only do I get the mental tics, but there are also like muscle tics that I get that can barely be seen. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
Absolutely.
Like they never fully go, but there are things that calm them down, definitely.
Yeah, of course. There's also things like behind closed doors as well that you have to deal with, like with sleeping. Obviously, that's a big one that you said earlier about you struggle to try and kind of wind down after a long day, or yeah, I think it's something that's not really spoken about a lot, is kind of like the behind the scenes of neurodivergency and things like that. And obviously people only ever see you, same as they only ever see me when you're out and about and things like that. And obviously when you get home or you're on your own, it becomes more of just like I feel I don't know, there's always seemed like I think anyone with neurodiversity tries to like put on a facade when they're out and about and things to try and make it seem like they are normal, which is, it's sad really that, you know, and I think it's good the way that society's moving. I think it's becoming more accepting of different neurodivergencies and appreciating the fact that, you know, a lot of people are neurodivergent. I think in schools now, I was working in a school not too long ago, and every 6 in 10 people in that school, and it was mainstream, were SEN.
Yeah, it was the same where in the primary school where we did our placement a few weeks ago. I believe it was about 60% of the class had additional needs. And it's really strange being in the creative community because it is such a neurodiverse community.
Oh yeah, massively.
Like you will always end up finding neurodiverse people either in a creative setting or in like a tradesman setting, I think. Because the brain with neurodivergency isn't necessarily catered towards the academic side of things. That doesn't mean it's not possible. Like it's not impossible. Like I've known quite a few people who are neurodivergent go down the academic route.
Yeah, of course.
And like it's weird because I didn't become neurodiverse until I was in my 20s. But I've always been a creative person.
Yeah.
And whilst I do have that academic side to me, my heart has just been in the creative space, I guess. You might have to fact check me on the neurodiverse in the creative and the tradespeople bit though, because I don't know if that's 100% accurate.
I'm sure that's very true. I think tradespeople, you've got the fact of it being very hands-on.
Definitely.
And I mean, creativity is always, I believe, I think it's, I've pretty much anyone I've ever worked on projects and things usually have been in some way neurodiverse. And I think, especially in school, for me, I'm sure you're very similar. Before I knew of my diagnosis, I would always steer more towards like creative classes and classes that were right or wrong answers. I hated maths, I hated science.
I actually quite enjoyed maths. I wasn't very good at it, but when I knew what I was doing, I did quite enjoy it a little bit. Doesn't mean I was very good at it though.
I feel like maths is always nice when you can solve the problem. Because you get to the end of it and you've done it. You know what I mean? It's like a sense of finishing. I think with English and things, you're never really an end to English because you're always having to think. There's always something more to say.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I was better at English. I loved English. Well, I enjoyed the creative writing side of English.
Yes, yeah, totally.
I prefer analysing stuff now that I'm older. I didn't like it when I was in school.
Yeah. Brilliant. It's been a great conversation. I think it's flown really nicely. Even if it did take over 2 hours to get it done. Wasn't my intention for it to be so long, but you've been great.
Wow.
But yeah, a couple of last kind of points. Obviously with it being or just coming out of Tourette's Awareness Month at the moment, what are the type of things you'd like to tell people about Tourette's from your personal experiences, or any messages you'd like to give people that possibly also are on a similar path to yourself? Or
Yeah, definitely.
what kind of things would you say are like little pockets of positivity or little pockets of knowledge?
Yeah, the iceberg is so much more than what you see on the surface when it comes to tics and Tourette's. Because like when I interact with people, they only see a small snippet of my day. They don't see what's going on under the surface.
Of course.
And it is so much more than what you think. It's so much more than just swearing and saying funny things. In fact, like only about 10% of people who tic have the swearing tic.
Yes. Yeah.
It just so happens that I'm one of them.
Yeah.
There's many different types of tics. There's echolalia, which is where you repeat stuff back. I've got that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's coprolalia, which is the swearing and the offensive stuff one. Not everyone says offensive stuff. And there is so much more going on under the surface that makes it mentally and physically exhausting.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we are incapable of achieving what we want. Because I've met people who tic, who are teachers, who are able to work within the creative fields, who are able to achieve whatever they want to do. It just takes a little bit of extra work, and you have to give yourself grace. And if you're like me, where you're starting to tic and you're in your 20s, or even if you're in like your teens at any point in life and like you're a ticker, it's just Tourette's at the end of the day. Like, to quote the mum who got Tourette's, it's just Tourette's, and you are so much more than your diagnosis or your tics. Because like for me, I'm a facilitator, I'm a director, I write, I act, I play the saxophone. Ticking for me is such a small part of what makes me me. You're so really much more than your diagnosis and your tics. It just makes up who you are as a person. It does not define who you are as a person. I'm an actor who happens to tic. I'm a musician who happens to tic. I'm a nice person who happens to tic. I'm a carer who happens to tic. You know, it's just, all it is just Tourette's. And it's manageable. It's horrible some days, don't get me wrong. It can be absolutely horrific. But it shouldn't stop you from doing anything.
Amazing. Wow, yeah. Brilliant, wise words there from you.
Thank you very much. I'll drink to that. My little bit of water left.
I know I've got a fair bit left, but absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I think that is wise words for anyone in life. I think that is really important to raise awareness to. I think that's definitely a big part of anything. Is, you know, it's a part of you, but it isn't all you.
Yeah,
and there's so much more that brings and makes you who you are. So that's really lovely to say, and very good point. As a finishing off point, I feel like we've gone through quite a lot of your story, and I've learned quite a lot about Tourette's. I'm sure the listeners have as well. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or any other points that you'd like to say about before we end the episode?
I was going to get political, but I won't this time.
Well, you're more than welcome to. It's a safe space. It is if you'd like to, you're more than welcome to.
The NHS is on its knees. I very nearly had to go private to get my diagnosis. But the tic attack that I had that led to the diagnosis was horrific, but it was a blessing in disguise, because it led me to see the neurologist who did give me my diagnosis.
Hopefully we've got brighter futures coming very soon when it comes to the
I don't know whether I want to keep that bit in now.
No, well, I think it's poignant. I think, the political stance, I think, especially with neurodivergency and with the NHS especially, I think it is something that is underfunded, and it is very difficult to get diagnosis for a lot of things. You know, me included. I'm sure a lot of people.
There are wait lists that are over 2 years long.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Depending on where you live as well, can depend on how fast you'll get seen or things like that. So it's always just. I think that's what puts a lot of people off getting diagnoses. But I think if you know, I think it's making a lot of people come back to the point of the diagnosis being a hindrance or diagnosis being needed. I think a lot of it comes down to personal preference. I think that's what my thought to it is. If it's going to give you a sense of clarity, you know, it isn't a quick path. It isn't one day you're like, wow, I am now this. You know, it's, you know, in yourself that you are, and a diagnosis just goes along with that. It's good for education.
Yeah.
Definitely.
A diagnosis is just a piece of paper that proves what you're saying is correct.
Yeah.
Because like I did have people at the start who didn't believe that this was happening, and people who thought I was faking. But the diagnosis, I was able to go, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm actually taking. I'm not leaving it.
No. I mean, that must have been really hard as well for yourself to be in that kind of new setting of understanding yourself, and then people are telling you, no, you're not.
Yeah. Oh no, like the first few nights I was like, okay, I need to stop this now. Why can't I stop? I've got to stop faking it. This is a horrible thing for me to do. And then I just couldn't stop. I was like, oh no, it is actually real.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think definitely for yourself, and same for me as well. It's diagnosis is very beneficial in that sense, absolutely. And it's a shame that we have to have a piece of paper to prove who we are and that we think differently, but that's the way, unfortunately, it works. But if there's anything else you want to speak on before we
can't think of anything, mate.
in today's episode? No, it's been a lovely chat.
Yeah,
it's been a really nice conversation. I think it's flowed really nicely, and I think I've learnt a lot, and I'm sure many others listening are also going to be learning a lot as well. And it's 10 minutes left.
You're a good mate of mine.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, it's just felt like I've just been chatting, like you know.
Oh, look at that! We've got 10 minutes left.
I know. I did just see that come up. Well, luckily we're at the end of the podcast, and we won't need to go on to another part 3.
Oh God, can you imagine?
I couldn't. Not after how long it took us to get on it the first time. But yeah, it's absolutely lovely chatting to you. And
thank you very much for having me on.
Well, of course, more than welcome to. We'll leave some links to some of the charities as well that you spoke about. What was the one?
Tourette's Action.
Yeah, Tourette's Action. That was it. We'll put a link in the description for that, for extra reading or anything else you'd recommend. That Channel 4 documentary as well.
Yeah, The Mum Who Got Tourette's. Not the Scarlet Moffat one.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, I love Scarlet Moffat, but the documentary that she did, Channel 4, just spreads a lot of misinformation. So
right, okay.
I would recommend The Mum Who Got Tourette's. There's also quite a few content creators online. So This Trippy Hippie, Otters Have Pockets. They're both tickers. And also, if you want to just learn a little bit about what it's like to live with a chronic illness, because Tourette's is ultimately chronic. I also recommend Amy Poll. She's one of my favourite online content creators.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for your.
And the Tourette's Barber. The Tourette's Barber is fantastic, and I
have seen him actually. Yes, no, he is. I love very his good. Stuff. Yeah, very, very good guy, and so all of those will be linked in the description for further reading or listening for anyone that's interested in knowing more about Tourette's and tic disorder. But I think we've covered everything. I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you for being a guest. Yeah, once again, thank you very much for being a guest. Thank you for your fountain of knowledge. And thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.